Falcons wide receiver Julio Jones makes a passionate plea for his teammates to step up, play better, and support Dan Quinn. But is it too little too late for the embattled coach? We'll talk about it next on AJC Falcons News Now.
This is AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Here are your hosts, Brandon Adams and former Atlanta Falcon Chuck Smith.
Hello everybody, welcome into AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. My name is Brandon Adams. This is the former Atlanta Falcon Chuck Smith. And Chuck, we have quite an interesting development going into the game on Sunday against Seattle. A game that some have called Dan Quinn's last stand, given the fact that the bye week looms the following Sunday. Apparently post-game this past weekend after the Rams, Julio Jones, the most respected member of this Falcons team, at least arguably so, stood up, defended Dan Quinn, and challenged the Atlanta Falcons players to play in support of him. As a former player who kind of knows what it means when the best player on a team speaks up to the team, what does the Julio Jones speech mean to you?
Well, I think first and foremost, it sounds like a little bit more frustration with your teammates. And it sounds like one of those things that Julio felt he had to say because nobody was saying it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to me, I'm happy that Julio did it, and I think it's fantastic. I really do, Brandon. I love the fact that he stood up, became a leader, but we're 1-6. This should have happened after week 2, week 3. You know, and one of those things about this team is that we always question the leadership, and I see what Julio did, but to me it came off as more frustration. Now the defending his coach part, they've been defending him all year. So this is just another one of those situations. I like what you did, but this is just another part of the propaganda, in my opinion, the way it's being used, whether it's the slogans. Remember the third week it was about the more of the, was it brotherhood?
All the
cousinhood.
Holding each other's hands and everything.
So, again, I just think it's something that Julio did well, but to me it's just, I don't know if it's the right time, if it was too late or not.
We'll hear from Julio Jones on this coming up in just a moment. Ricardo Allen, the tremendous Falcons defensive member, was quoted by the AJC as offering his explanation of what he thought that all meant. Let me show you what Allen said as quoted by the AJC on this topic, essentially explaining what it means to him when Julio Jones speaks up. Allen says it just showed that people who are willing to step up and say that we're not getting it done. It's not that the coaches are not getting it done. This is Allen speaking to the AJC. It's that we're not getting it done as players. We have to be accountable to that. We have to be accountable for our play and to each other. Now, when Falcons wide receiver Julio Jones was asked about this when he spoke to reporters a little bit later on this week, he was a little bit more characteristically downplaying his own words, downplaying the moment, essentially saying in so many words that what happened in the locker room stays in the locker room. Here is Julio Jones on that.
Guys look up at me, look towards me, and in those situations and things like that, we're just trying to figure out things, and that's all it was.
So obviously Julio Jones not saying a whole lot about that there, but did go on to say that ultimately this comes down to effort. The effort the players may be already showing, but maybe reaching down and finding another reservoir of that effort to bring to the table against the Seahawks, and maybe even doing that in support of the embattled Quinn. Here's more from Julio Jones.
I mean, I believe in everybody's here, the effort they're giving, but they only know how much effort they're giving. You know, it can look good, but if you got more, you know, it's on you to give more and do your part. But from what I see, everybody's been doing a great job as far as going out here and fighting every week.
So, go ahead.
Brandon, I'm just sick of hearing that. So when you come out and say that, you know what you're saying is, they know what their effort is? No, y'all know who's giving effort in the locker room. You understand what I'm saying? So I hear what Julio was saying, but to me, this is a glaring weakness on the Falcons. Who is the leader? Why did it take this long? And for, Ricardo Allen to come out and say, yeah, man, you know, it shows that he cares. I'm sure he does care. We are 1-6. For you guys to still be saying things like that, and I'm not trying to come down hard, I'm keeping it real, man. We can sit around here and put diapers on and baby these cats all you want. Step up, Julio. Come out and challenge these cats and stick with it. Come out and say, you know what, we can do better. You know what I'm saying? So to hear what they keep saying again is driving me crazy because it's just part of we're making excuses for ourselves to kind of ease the pain a little bit. We got all these different things that's going to make us play. Go out and play ball and quit talking or talk a lot and let's go. Whatever you're going to do.
We'll take more of your comments coming up on this on both YouTube and on Facebook here on AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. I think what you're saying is interesting, and I might say something similar, but maybe in a slightly different way.
Right.
I've got great respect for Julio Jones. Obviously, Julio Jones' career has done the talking for him. This is not just one of the best Falcons, but one of the best Atlanta professional athletes of the last 20 years. But in a certain sense, I don't want to hear from him on this, and I'll tell you why.
Why?
Julio Jones has got his money. Julio Jones' career and his life is made. He just signed the big extension, and frankly, in future years, that contract could become a problem for the Falcons. But pushing that aside for the moment, just on the substance of this matter, for Julio Jones to say, hey, y'all in this locker room, guys who haven't been where I am right now, getting the set-for-life contract, the kind of Godfather deal that's going to set his family up for generations and generations, Julio deserves that money. You can say that, and I got no problem with that. But in terms of telling lesser-paid athletes whose future in the NFL is not as certain, whose financial future is not as rock-solid as Julio's is, hey, y'all should play for Dan Quinn. I don't mind that other guy who's sitting there listening to Julio Jones saying that. I don't mind him in the back of his mind thinking, I'm not quite so sure Dan Quinn and this coaching staff is the kind of coaching staff, Julio, that can get me to where you are, which is set up for my grandkids and their grandkids. The kind of, long, guaranteed extension that kind of puts you on easy street for the rest of your life. A lot of these Falcons players are not there. With better coaching or a better scheme on both sides of the ball, by the way, they may have a better chance to get there. So if I'm a Falcons player, and I know this sounds harsh, but I feel like it's got to be said. If I'm a Falcons player in that locker room last Sunday hearing Julio Jones say that, to me this sounds like a bought and paid for opinion by a guy who got the Fat Cat contract, and now who does Julio care who the Falcons coach is? He's going to get paid no matter what.
Right, and when you look at it, that's what you're supposed to do. You know what I'm saying? So you're getting paid a lot of money, and then you come out and speak, and this is one of the things that I was frustrated with. Players in the locker room, well documented, they say, well, man, when Julio says it, man, it's time to get serious. Well, what are you talking about? Guys are basically saying that when Julio talks, it's time to turn it up. So I see from Julio's standpoint, I get it. But there's so many other players on this team that are high paid, step up, say something, it's okay. But to me, it sounds like there's some issues that were going on in the building when it comes to the brotherhood. They're trying to keep it all together, because under these circumstances, when they say everybody got to do their job, everybody give effort, there's some people in the locker room start looking at each other. Yeah. They're doing a good job of keeping it in-house, but they absolutely know that in-house that there's some other things that are going on, especially when you start keep losing.
Let me take a few comments here. We're going to hear from Dan Quinn on this topic in just a moment. AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Miller Lite, the official beer of the Atlanta Falcons. It tastes great, and it's just 96 calories. So we'll hear from Quinn on this. For now, let's hear from some of you a little bit. Paul Embry sounds like he wouldn't mind seeing Raheem Morris get a chance to be interim coach, if that's indeed the direction the Falcons need to go in. Billy Ray Field says, can someone who plays for Atlanta just come out and say, we suck, we need to hit the reset button, we need to get our stuff together, and tired of all the cliches. The honest truth is, Billy Ray, obviously they can't say that. No. They have to keep the professional face. And so from that standpoint, Julio Jones' words will be a welcome thing for most of the people kind of associated with this team, because you have to do the best you can to get through the season. I don't work for the Falcons. I don't play for the team, so I have the freedom to say, man, this team needs a coaching change. This team needs some new energy. This team may even need some new players. I have the freedom to say that because my words don't carry quite as much weight. But if you're Julio Jones, you can't do the opposite of the speech that he apparently gave on Sunday. You can't come out and say, this organization needs change right now.
You won't do that.
That's just not acceptable in professional sports. So since he can't say that, the best you can do is try to make the best of the situation you're in right now. And I don't have a problem with that from him, but these words in particular fall on deaf ears for me because, as I said before, Julio's a guy that's cashing a pretty big paycheck right now. There are guys on this team who are seemingly hungrier than him because they want to be where Julio Jones is, and I'm not quite so sure this coaching staff is equipped to help get those guys there.
And that's a good point. So now it kind of is taking the pressure off of Dan Quinn. So good job, Julio. You kind of did something that probably the team and the organization were happy about. Now, it comes to this. What happens now? What happens Sunday? You come in this game now. Julio's put some pressure on the guys. As much as they hadn't had much pressure on them, they've added a lot now, right? They hadn't had a lot of pressure on them because nobody expected them to win. So we're like, oh, okay, no expectations. But now Julio says, wow, I spoke up. So now everybody's going to play better. So we're going to see. It's going to be really interesting.
Well, let me ask you a question about that, because Nick Bagnulo in the Facebook comment section says, I hope the speech helps. Now, I'm honestly curious of your opinion on this, because I would have told you on Monday, and I know this sounds like overly cynical. I don't mean for it to come out that way. I just think from the perspective of a Falcons fan, you've sort of lost any reason to cheer for this team to win games this year. I know that sounds terrible, but New Orleans is going to run away with the NFC South. At this point in time, wins, to my eyes, only seem to hurt your draft positioning when you really have a chance to go. I mean, I hate to say it, but 1 in 15 is a realistic possibility for Atlanta this year. So it's almost like if you can put yourself in the sweepstakes for a big-time pass rusher out of Ohio State or a big-time trade for one of these teams that needs a quarterback, that seems to me to be a reasonable goal. But because Julio is so popular, even if I say the speech falls on deaf ears for me and may come too little too late, Julio is very popular with Falcons fans. Do you think that Julio, in addition to maybe getting the team to want to play harder, do you think it also gets Falcons fans to say, you know what, let me not worry about Tankapalooza for 1 week, and let me not worry about stinking for Lincoln or whatever the head coach opportunity might be out there. Let me rally around. If I don't want to rally around Quinn, let me rally around number 11 because I do like him. Do you think Julio gets fans more involved with this game on Sunday? Do fans now want to support Quinn more because Julio has chosen to do so?
Well, I think you're going to support the team if you're going to support the team, win or lose. But I will say this, as far as what Julio said, I will tell you the team in situations like this, I've been involved in a few of these where the guy, came out and, important person on our team. They're going to come out with absolute fire. The Falcons will come out swinging. They're going to come out first quarter with energy and all those different things, making plays. But then what? The next 3 quarters, that always happens. So at the end of the day, all the hoopla is over when the energy and all the stuff that Julio brought when he came with his words don't mean nothing when you go on the field. Because the Seattle Seahawks, they could care less about those words. But the Falcons, they'll carry that for a while. Then ultimately the things who they are, the execution, the protection, the special teams, the turnovers, the lack of pass rush will either they'll do better or it'll show up like it usually does. So there's but so much Julio can do.
Rashad Singletary says if we get a top 3 pick, it may be time to start looking for a replacement quarterback to develop for the next 2 to 3 years. We're going to talk more about Ryan later on in the show, but I think that, and I know we see a lot of negativity towards Ryan in our comment sections, both on Facebook and YouTube, just simply because of the fact that in a bad season, everyone's going to get that criticism. But Chuck, I think it's a dream world to think the Falcons, they may have to move off, from Dan Quinn. They may move on from Thomas Dimitroff. But if Atlanta competes for a Super Bowl anytime over the course of the next decade, the most likely scenario by which that happens is Matt Ryan regains some of the magic he had with Kyle Shanahan in 2016. Ryan's not going anywhere, nor do I think that he should. I know there's some people like Rashad who want to criticize him in the midst of a bad season. I don't think your franchise quarterback should be immune from that criticism, but if Atlanta gets back to its winning ways sometime between now and about 2030, Matt Ryan's going to be the reason why.
Right. Here's my thing about Matt Ryan. I like Matt Ryan because I've been watching the game closely, watching the Falcons, but here's what I don't like. You got to look at it. The fans, everybody that's watching this right now, you watching what I'm watching, the offensive line has absolutely been below average for a long, long time. No quarterback can thrive under those conditions, neither Matt Ryan. I don't care who it is. Tom Brady, I don't know if they've ever been as bad as Matt, but there's no quarterbacks out there. You hit a quarterback, beat him up, it's going to be the same thing. So to me, Matt Ryan is ultimately not the issue. The personnel and their ability to perform has been the issues when it comes to Matt Ryan's, ultimate success.
I think that's a good point. Falcons, Hawks, Braves fan extraordinaire on YouTube says, to my question of does Julio's speech make fans want to support the team more if they were kind of out on it based on the bad start of the season? He says, no, fans for the most part are out on Quinn, in my opinion. I believe you're probably right, but certainly the narrative around Flowery Branch this week has been a little bit different than it was. I mean, let's face it. Atlanta has a bye week looming after the Seahawks game. We know what that could mean. It's been largely speculated a lot that this could be a time in which Atlanta might make a move on Quinn. I mean, that's just, it's rumor and innuendo, but it's been spoken about enough that it's hard to not deny those rumors are at least out there. But it hasn't been like a dead man walking week around Flowery Branch this week because of the fact that Julio has at least changed that narrative. So I don't know what it means for Sunday. My assumption is Seattle still wins, and I'm guessing they win fairly easy.
But Brandon,
there's a different mood, at least with Julio speaking up.
And the mood is we got to have something to rally around.
Yeah.
We have nothing. Right now we are a team that the national media are calling us out. The local fans have turned on us. We don't even know who we are inside our building. So for the Falcons, I'm going to rally around anything I can get. And so that's kind of what I see. They're rallying, and that's what you got to do. You know how teams say it's us against them. It's just us. So they're having the us mentality. But, I mean, that's the reason why they are. You got to be upbeat in this situation.
We're going to talk more about Matt Ryan in a moment, specifically his status for Sunday and why I think the Falcons are on the verge of making a terrible mistake about that. We'll get to that here on AJC Falcons News Now. One more thing on this topic before we get there, though. Obviously, Dan Quinn, moved by Julio Jones' words, respects him as a leader, and he spoke about that this week.
The team, knows him, from the leading style that he is. And it's always important during the hardest moments that you step up and you're strongest as you could be. He's such an impactful guy on this team, not just offensively. And I think that's what's so unique about him. There's some guys, they may be, a leader on the offense. Well, he's a leader on our football team. And so when you talk about, the connecting of everybody, he's right in the front and center of that. And sometimes that gets pushed to the quarterback, and certainly on our team it does, obviously with Matt. But there's other players that have this connection with the entire team, and none stronger than 11. It's by his play, it's by his style. But when he speaks, to a whole group, obviously it carries a lot of weight. Oftentimes he'll do a lot of things behind the scenes that are one-on-one. So when he goes in front of the entire group, there's a huge impact for that. And it was what we needed at that time. And so, I've got lots of respect for him already, but, on and off the field, I always have.
Necessarily like Julio's speech in this context as much as some people do, but there's no doubt that it seems to have had an effect on Atlanta, at least for right now. And the weird byproduct of all this, Chuck, is after this, you've really tried everything, right? I mean, we've heard that, they've divided up some of the defensive responsibilities. They've seemingly done about everything that you can do. Once, we've even heard, Vic Beasley a couple weeks ago saying, man, we feel like we've let Coach Quinn down. Once Julio Jones, cuts off Quinn in the locker room and basically gives it the rah-rah speech, you've tried everything else you've got at that point in time, right? There's no, so if nothing else, you can literally say, well, we threw everything against the wall and nothing stuck. If this doesn't work, there's nothing left to try.
You got to cut somebody.
You're going to have to.
You got to cut 3 or 4 guys. I don't know. And that's just a joke. But I don't know what you got to do. I mean, they traded Sanu. I don't think that had anything to do with, what's going on right now.
We'll get to that in a minute, too, by the way.
Yeah, you've tried everything, but the players ultimately got to take responsibility. But we've seen where, the coaching has affected the players. But there's no which way but up. There's an old Richard Pryor movie called Which Way Is Up.
Mm-hmm. Who are you talking about, Richard Pryor? You don't think I've seen some of these movies?
You seen that? Which Way Is Up?
Brewster's Millions, for sure. Back in the 80s, don't even think
that
about
was a good one, too.
I like that one for sure. Hey, let me tell you something else I like. We've had a great response to this. Subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now. When you become an AJC subscriber, because one way or another, there is just big news happening in Flowery Branch every single day. Julio speaking up, trades going down, future of Dan Quinn, a lot to be sort of figured out there on the branch, and nobody does a better job of that than our AJC staff, led by D. Orlando Ledbetter, embedded there in Flowery Branch. Also great columns, Mark Bradley, Michael Cunningham, Steve Hummer. To get the best AJC Falcons coverage every single day, the most in-depth coverage, the way to get that is to become an AJC subscriber. Lots of choices. You can get the daily e-paper, Sunday print with the e-paper, or 7-day home delivery, so you can read it on your device. You can hold the paper in your hands, read it there at your kitchen table. Great options available to you. And as a special thank you, because of the fact that the AJC is a proud partner of the Atlanta Falcons, this officially licensed, branded Atlanta Falcons cooler that you can take to the watch party, the tailgate, or wherever you happen to go. Subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now, the website to go to take care of all that. And I think many of you have already taken advantage of this great offer, and I know many of you more will as we head towards a very newsy time coming up for the Falcons. With that said, let's talk about some more Falcons news here for a moment on AJC Falcons.
Any good news?
Well, you can decide for yourself this is good news.
It makes it hard. Let's call a spade a spade. So our people that are watching.
Who are you telling about that?
You want to know how hard it is to every week talk about a team? I mean, I would love to talk about the 5-game win streak. I would love, but and it's a tough time really for them, But heck, I hate reporting the negativity. But the facts are,
Yeah.
we got to give information you can use.
That's what we do here on AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. So you tell me for yourself if you think this is good news. I have a pretty strong opinion on this. Matt Ryan apparently back at practice today for the Falcons. D. Orlando Ledbetter from the AJC reporting from an eyewitness account of what he saw himself about Ryan. I'll show you this and kind of give you the account. D-Led says that he appeared comfortable on short three-step drawbacks. He threw a series of passes to his left, then to the middle and to the right and stationary receivers. He didn't throw to any receivers running routes during the portion of practice that was open to the media. Once again, that is D. Orlando Ledbetter from the AJC. Chuck, I hate to say it, but I got to. If they play Ryan on Sunday, I think they're on the verge of making a catastrophic mistake. There are some things out there worse than losing to Seattle. It would be a hobbled Ryan with an offensive line that has not exactly been perfect this year, taking a shot that then puts him out for even longer. His cap figure next year is like $33 million. You have got to insure him, protect him. You've got to do whatever it takes. I'm not saying sit him out because of a Tankapalooza thing, although there's a case to be made. I'm saying for the sake of 2020 and for the sake of games far more important than this lame duck game against the Seahawks, you cannot put Ryan at jeopardy here. You cannot put Ryan at risk here. I think if they play him, I'm not a doctor, I don't know how healthy he is. I do know that he's unhealthy enough that he's only now practicing on Friday. Given that as the scenario, you cannot play Ryan in this game.
Whoa, that was a lot. But I understand there's a lot of people that are going to have that opinion. But for me, as a former player, you want your guys out there. And this, for the Falcons, you feel more comfortable when he's out there. You know he gives you a better chance to win when he's out there. You know the risks, or regardless if he's hurt or not. I mean, you can't get beat up no more than he did against the LA Rams. I just feel that if you're healthy enough as an NFL player, you go out there and you let the chips fall where they may. And, part of this thing with Julio, and I'm starting to see a little bit now. And I understand, what Julio said, and I feel like he should have said earlier. But under these circumstances, Matt Ryan, come back to fight with you guys. Julio's rallied the troops, so to speak, and they come out there, play well. This will go a long ways if Matt Ryan comes out there, the Falcons win and turn this thing around, and it could be interesting.
But let me give you a cautionary tale from your own division.
Yeah.
If you're the Falcons, you do not want Matt Ryan to be what Cam Newton is right now. A guy that has taken so many hits that he's now hobbled to the point where Kyle Allen is the better option. Allen, at this point in time, is the better quarterback for Carolina than Cam Newton is, even though Newton once got him to a Super Bowl and once led Auburn to a national championship. I know what Newton was, but he is now a fragment of his former self as a quarterback because he's taken too many hits. You do not want Ryan to be where Newton is a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever. And unnecessary shots when he doesn't have the mobility to move around because of what I'm assuming is going on with his ankle, given the fact that the offensive line's had the issues that it's had. Obviously, Seattle wants to get after the quarterback on Sunday. Given all that as a backdrop, you don't want to see Ryan become what Cam Newton is, because there's no guarantee you'll have a Kyle Allen waiting in the wings there.
And I understand. And to me, that comparison, to me, that's not a good comparison. Let's just put it this way. Let me just break it down a little bit. To me, the Cam Newton situation is like this. It's like Cam Newton was in the fight, but he ran into the fight and then he got beat up, right? Matt Ryan was standing there and he got jumped. To me, it's a difference. Matt Ryan hadn't been getting beat up like Cam. Cam was running around getting beat up all the time. Cam has bad shoulders, so the way Cam plays is not conducive to really having longevity. Matt Ryan has sat in the pocket. Again, they're coming to get him. Cam is running out to get beat up half the time. So I think Matt Ryan, he's almost going to break a streak, right? He's started 134 or something.
He's been a very durable quarterback.
Yeah, he's been durable. I forgot the numbers, but
yeah.
To me, it's different. I mean, for Matt Ryan, it's still a little different.
So I understand that this is me, guy who watches games on TV, talking to a guy who played this game, and I understand how players approach this, right? I mean, it's always going to be of, if you can go, you should. You as much as anybody we could talk to is going to respect the toughness required to play in the National Football League. And so the idea that a questionable player might choose to sit out, I know that doesn't sit well with you, just given your career. However, it still makes me want to push back on this and say, what do you gain by winning, and what do you risk by not just losing the game, but losing Ryan to injury? If you told me the prize for winning is 1-6 becomes 2-6, the overall fortunes of the season don't necessarily change. But if you told me that Ryan all of a sudden gets hit so hard or further compensating for an ankle injury, then injure some other part of his body, the risk that you would have there at that point in time, the trade-off is just not equal. The risk far outweighs the reward. This game on Sunday is only truly important to one person. The only person that really matters in this game is Dan Quinn. Because Quinn knows that with a win, he may have a chance to salvage his job beyond the bye week. With a loss, there's at least some chance, based on all the rumors that have been out there, that he might lose his job there at that point in time. So the only person that matters, this game truly matters to, is Dan Quinn. If it was ever even assumed that Ryan was playing to save Quinn, that is just a really bad trade to make.
And okay, let me just go to the beginning.
By all
there's
means.
a lot there. You talked about toughness and me seeing it that way. Just being a former player, kind of like having the old school mentality. If I'm healthy, I'm gonna play. So I understand that. But also being an old school player that's never going to change is that it's part of a family. Mm-hmm. I'm the father of a family, as well as Matt Ryan's part of a family and a whole nucleus. All these guys have families. So guess what? When you lose every week, it makes you feel like straight garbage. You feel terrible. So the reason I would see Matt Ryan playing just to get one win, because I want to be happy that week.
Okay.
So I want to feel good. I want to be able to go to a restaurant and not have people question me. And number two, it's a job. No matter what fans think about this, they play fantasy and all that, Brandon, but it's a job. So when I wake up in the morning, I got to go to work. So what happens is, there are times where everybody here, AJC, when you get sick at AJC, don't your boss expect you to come in when it's something that you can work with? The NFL is the same thing. It is a job. Certain things you got to do for the company. And again, it's just part of it. So there's some things, everybody looks at it as draft picks and like NFL players aren't real. Guys just want to be happy. The guys in the locker room are not thinking about that. They could care less, really, ultimately. And at the end of the day, guys aren't playing saying we're going to play for Dan Quinn. They're saying that publicly, but you know what they're doing? They're saying I got to play for me, because that eye in the sky, when the season's over, and say if Dan Quinn's not here, and you never hear me call for a man's job, but if Dan Quinn gets fired, guess who's evaluated? Ricardo Allen, Devondre Campbell. So to me, there are lots of different reasons to win, because number one, man, I want to feel good. I'm just tired of losing at my job. Just a basic, everyday, basic, regular lifestyle.
I understand.
You know what I mean?
I understand. I
just
do
from
understand.
that standpoint.
It's AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite, where I get a lot of your comments on the Ryan topic and whether you think he needs to be out there on Sunday or not. And for some people who want to take Ryan to task for part of the failings of this year, we'll give you a chance to do that there as well. Let's talk about the situation as we understand it with Ryan at the moment. We gave you the quote from Orlando Ledbetter a moment ago. Here's what Falcons coach Dan Quinn said about Ryan's status earlier in the week ahead of the practice that Ryan participated in today. Here's Quinn.
We're hopeful that as he's going through the week, we'll get some practice reps for him. But I know he's encouraged. This guy is pure grit, pure fight. And so if there's a will, he's going to find it. I'll have a better sense for really into Friday. Let's see what tomorrow can look like, what he can do, what more can he add into Friday. And if he can move and do the things that make him, then we'll let him do his thing. But like I said, there's a few guys that are that tough that are able to, if we'll give them the window to do it. And 11's one, 51 and 2, they've all proven, during my 5 years that they've certainly, if there's a will, they'll find a way.
So I don't doubt what Dan Quinn says there, that if you ask Matt Ryan, he's going to want to play in this game. If I ask you back during your career, hey, you too hurt to go, there's not a chance in the world you'd ever said, yeah, I think I'm going to have to sit this one out this week. You may have been hurt, you may have been injured, but that's none of your own volition, right? Players always want to play. I take Quinn at his word on that when it comes to Matt Ryan. I'm sure Julio Jones, Mac, I'm sure those guys would all kind of be the same way there in that situation. But everything in life requires checks and balances. We need checks and balances in our government. We need checks and balances in our workplaces. People, if left to their own devices, will make the decisions that benefit them. Players want to play because that's just their instinct. Guys want to, impress the eye in the sky that doesn't lie. I get all of that. But the organization is going to exist beyond 2019. There are people within this organization right now that may not live to see beyond this season, but the organization itself will exist beyond this time frame. What you hope is that someone is looking down on all this and saying, I'm sorry, I realize you think this may benefit you short term, but organizationally, we've got to think about 2020 and beyond, because the NFL, we always say not for long in terms of, guys on their way out, but can also fortunately be not for long in terms of the cycle for how you get back good again. But you can't write checks during the bad year that are forced to be paid off on in future years. My preference in this situation, if I was a Falcons fan, would be for somebody to step in and say, I realize that the instinct here is to have Ryan play, but I'm looking at the 2020 version of our organization, and that's not what we're going to wish we had done when we start looking at this from a future vantage point.
Well, I understand that again. But to me, for someone to come down when my team is 1-6 and my quarterback wants to play and help us, to me, that would be absolutely weak for someone up top to say, hey, let's sit Matt, let's protect Matt. Let's sit him down for a while, almost like the Lakers did LeBron, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that's that.
Load management,
right,
they call the NBA.
Right.
A little load management here for the Falcons. I'm not so sure that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's such a bad idea.
But if Matt Ryan couldn't help the team, I'm sure he wouldn't dress out. He got an ankle sprain. All right, he didn't tear his ACL.
Yeah.
I mean, my thing is, for God's sake, it's not like he tore his thumb off and he can't throw. So to me, he's a drop back passer anyway. Matt ain't running anyway.
But he's running for his life as it is. You're going to give him now a hobbled ankle to have to do all that kind of stuff. The chances of him taking a big shot have gone up greatly if a tender ankle Matt Ryan's having to run away from these guys.
You talking about the Seattle? Well, this is the right game to come back because Seattle ain't got no pass rush.
Well,
they got 11 sacks. Clowney got 1. But look,
what do you bet they find one come Sunday?
But look, okay, but here's where coaching comes in. So here's an expectation I like to see Falcons do. Do some max protection. Sometimes keep Stocker in to protect. Sometimes let Freeman stay in and block. Have a 6-man protection instead of sending everybody out. That's one of the biggest things I see why quarterbacks getting beat up now.
Okay.
Everybody want to spread it out.
I agree with you on this.
So for the Falcons, you got to get – this is a week where you say we're going to run the ball, we're going to force the ball, but we got to have protection. So to me, Matt Ryan comes back as much as some of it everybody want to say is falling on him. He should be protected by the organization. I need the players to protect, but also the scheme has to be fit around the quarterback. That might need a little extra protection.
You really bring up a really good point about that. We talked about some of the numbers from Warren Sharp before, who's kind of crunched this stuff. And when you come to 3 receiver sets, 12 personnel where you have 2 tight ends on the field, Atlanta all year long, and I think it's because of the offensive line, they have not been able to throw the ball in 3 receiver sets for the most part this year because they can't protect the quarterback well enough to do
So what
that.
they've been in? You're saying they've been keeping guys in?
Well, I'm saying that when you look at 12 personnel where you have the 2 tight ends or only 1 tight end with the 3 receivers, I'm backing up your point that Atlanta has just done better throwing the ball with 2 tight ends in the game because they needed extra protector.
And they do, and it's tough. There's so many variables in this thing that we can talk about. There is no running game.
Yeah.
I mean, we literally have – how many 100-yard games have we had this year? Has anyone gotten 100 yards? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So all those things will help Matt Ryan, and we put all this pressure actually on him right now. We ain't talking about the running game.
Right.
So to me – I understand if Matt were to sit down and they would say that because not just because of Matt's ankle, it's because we have no running game. The offensive, the offensive line are challenged. So, if they were to do that, which I don't think they would, and I don't think Matt should accept that, but it makes it tougher when you ain't got no running game.
All right, let's do this. Let's run through a good number of comments. We haven't done enough of that yet, so we'll get some of this here today. Sean Jones says, what do you have to say about trading Matt Ryan? We're not haters. We're just speaking facts. Matt Ryan needs to go. So, listen, I understand where this comes from, and I said this before. In a season that's been as bad as it is for Atlanta, no one should be impervious to that criticism, Ryan included. But here's the thing. Even if you wanted to entertain trading Matt Ryan, which I don't think the Falcons ever would do, nor do I think Falcons fans should want them to do, but I'll go with you on this as a hypothetical. Even if you wanted to entertain that, your freedom to get underneath all of his contract and everything else, that went out the door the moment that you re-upped the guy we talked about off the top of the show. The moment you gave that big contract to Julio Jones, you put, you can call it handcuffs if you want to, but you put him in handcuffs with Matt Ryan for the rest of Julio Jones' career because take a look around the league right now. Some rookie quarterbacks really pan out. Some of these rookie quarterbacks really do not. And guess what? Going into draft night, you don't know which ones are which. It's only about a 50-50 proposition for the best case scenario. So imagine if you said, well, Matt Ryan's just too much money. We're going to move on from him. We're going to bring in a different quarterback. There are a lot of teams in this league that are on their second and third quarterback they've tried to get and they just haven't worked out. Picking a franchise quarterback is not an easy thing to do. And you cannot waste the final years of Julio Jones trying to rediscover the magic that you've had with Matt Ryan over the course of his career. So from that standpoint alone, it's a non-starter. Julio Jones, the money you're paying him becomes completely worthless if you don't have a franchise quarterback for him to deliver the football. So as I said before, if Atlanta makes a run towards a Super Bowl in the next decade, it is overwhelmingly likely to occur because Matt Ryan leads you there. And apart from him, the chances of doing that for the next 10 years pretty much go down to nothing.
It's always surprised me, Brandon, with this same argument with Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan has been efficient. Matt Ryan has been one of the best quarterbacks the organization's ever had. I've been a Falcon fan for a long time. My experience over the decades has been we've had some good quarterbacks. We've had guys who've had incredible years. But Matt Ryan is not the issue, in my opinion. And I don't know if there's ever been a more scrutinized, successful athlete in Atlanta than Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
When he does good, he's scrutinized. When he does bad, he's scrutinized.
And that's the nature of being a quarterback.
Yeah, but it is. But to me, when you look at the climate in the National Football League of the Blake Bortles, guys who were first rounders that got canned, when you look at all the different guys on these different teams, Matt Ryan we're in a good position just to have a franchise guy. You understand? Think about the 49ers. Before they got Garoppolo, who were they? They were absolute losers. So there are a lot of different things in here that to me say Matt Ryan's a little misunderstood, but I just think also the coordinator situation have always bogged him down. There's no running game. Your defense was suspect. And the biggest thing I'm going to tell you about Matt Ryan, the offensive line hasn't been productive as you'd like them to be. And I'm not making excuses for him because I'm going to call a spade a spade. But to me, there's so many things go wrong when Matt Ryan is right.
Yeah, let me get a few more Facebook comments on this topic and a whole lot more either. Ryan Mathis says, nothing's wrong with Ryan right now, but it's definitely time to bring in a young gun to learn under him, like maybe a Joe Burrow. You know, at some point in time, that conversation is going to be had. You know, obviously, other franchise quarterbacks around the NFL are in the process of being replaced. Daniel Jones with the Giants, for instance. But that's different than what I think the Falcons' future is supposed to be. Whether they beat Seattle on Sunday or not, to me, this is about somewhat taking advantage of the fact that you have a quarterback right now that you don't have to replace. You have a crop of receivers, certainly led by Julio Jones, that you feel really good about. You don't have the luxury of investing draft pick and money in a backup quarterback right now to one day take over from Matt Ryan. You don't have the luxury of that. And when you see how many teams have had success with the cheaper option at quarterback, you know, if you ever got to that situation in the future, you know, trying that for a little bit, finding your own version of Russell Wilson, that's not such a bad way to go for a couple of years if you indeed did need to do that. But for right now, it's about how can you maximize the prime years of these highly paid veterans that you still have.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Deion Jones and some of the guys like that are, we never talk about that, are high paid. I still think there's a development phase for those guys, but if you're going to think about, you know, investing in a quarterback, we need a new Keanu Neal. I mean, he's been out 2 years. Yeah. We need to add a big body inside next to Grady Jarrett. I hate to say this again for the last few years. Everybody said it. We need a pass rusher.
Yeah.
You know, so there are different things. We still, to me, you throw in one more offensive lineman, now you're starting to build, whether it's for Matt Ryan or the next guy. There's so many glaring positions that we need to draft in besides a backup quarterback. Now, I'd find a journeyman or I keep Schaub, but we will learn a lot about Matt Schaub if he does play this weekend. We'll learn a lot if he is the guy or not in this one-game situation, but it looks like Matt Ryan could play, but it's going to be interesting if Matt Schaub does play.
Linda Williams likes what she's hearing from Chuck Smith. She throws a big thank you. Craig Smith says, Matt Ryan's one of the top line quarterbacks in the league. Are you kidding me here? Obviously, there have been some moments for Ryan this season that admittedly have not been great. He was a turnover machine through the first few games of the season. Getting a little bit better now, maybe. Obviously, it's hard to make the full evaluation because, as Chuck said, I know it comes across as excuse-making. For many people, it's going to sound that way. But with no Lindstrom along the offensive line and given what he's had protecting him this year, it's hard to get that full-on evaluation of Ryan. And plus, I said this on Monday, Dirk Cutter has dusted off the oldest, most antiquated playbook in the world. Doesn't resemble some of the really cool stuff you're seeing from Cliff Kingsbury with the Arizona Cardinals. It doesn't resemble some of the stuff that Sean McVay brought in and ran on you in your own stadium last Sunday. I mean, I think that one of these newfangled offensive minds teamed up with a Ryan, teamed up with this wide receiver core, getting a little cheaper at running back wouldn't kill you. I think some of that kind of stuff, all of a sudden the Falcons offense becomes a very, very interesting equation, but you got to have the right guy who's the architect of that offense.
Yeah, and I'm looking at, a young gunner, these new guys like you talked about, Eric Bieniemy, like him at Kansas City, someone.
And I know
like
you're going to talk
that,
more about this with us on Monday as well.
On Monday.
Yeah.
But I agree with you because they're just the creativity of this is what kind of got me Arizona. The Arizona game kind of captured me, and we've been talking about Lincoln Riley but even like Cliff Kingsbury. I watched this offense, just watch the dynamics of it. You know what I mean? Just the moving pieces, how they out-coached us with personnel. And that's the first time I looked and I was like, man, I'd like to get some of that. That was nice.
Yeah, exactly,
really
because
nice.
This is a guy that has brought some college stuff to the NFL, but this is not some college guy trapped in the professional league. He's evolving to the NFL play. We talk about tight ends a lot. He's playing more tight ends now. He's doing that kind of thing, the kind of thing that you don't do in the Big 12, you don't do in college football, certainly west of the Mississippi especially. But he's doing more of that in the NFL because I think he wants to be an NFL coach. This is a former college coach who's going to make his bones in the NFL, much the same way that Jim Caldwell was once that guy. Cliff Kingsbury's trying to be that guy now. Yeah,
he is. And I mean, just offense, just dynamic. I really just love what he does. But these new offenses now, you're talking about in college.
Yeah.
I see that, it's a lot different than Chip Kelly when he was coming out of college. He went to the NFL out of Oregon. He flopped in Philly. I think the evolution of what they've done has added in more running, has added in the 12, the 22, the big, the unbalanced different things that you can do. I mean, even when you look at Indianapolis, what they're doing with Jacoby Brissett, I mean, unbelievable scheme. They pound it, and all of a sudden they go 4 wides. They're getting creative. So
I also think Brissett's a pretty interesting quarterback prospect. I think he's not as good as Andrew Luck, at least right now, but I think that he is boy, you'd be doing pretty well. If you lose Luck surprisingly before the start of the season, and a guy like Brissett steps in as your starting quarterback, you're pretty lucky if you can make that kind of transition. They've made it very well.
Yeah, you can win with Brissett. We haven't talked about Andrew Luck. I mean, his name hadn't come up because they've been successful. But one thing we've talked about that we don't have here in Atlanta that Jacoby Brissett has, he has a running game. He's protected with the running game. So,
Let me do a few more comments, and then I want to talk about the Mohamed Sanu trade because I think it's an interesting discussion for Atlanta here. One more quick point, though. There's an aspect of what Ryan's going through right now and what he went through with Steve Sarkisian. It kind of reminds me of a certain point in Michael Vick's career where when Greg Knapp was Vick's offensive coordinator, there are a lot of times I looked in on that and was saying, it just doesn't seem like that Knapp is setting up Vick to succeed. Now, Vick and Ryan are very different quarterbacks, but there's a certain style of offense that are going to benefit both guys. And I never really felt like when Knapp was here, he was really doing the best of what Michael Vick, could have done. You feel kind of the same way here. Ryan needs to be in one of these quick strike, up-tempo offenses. Ryan is good at reading defenses. He's comfortable throwing the football. So let him do that in kind of an up-tempo fashion. Take advantage of that. Don't ask the offensive line to block quite so long. To me, in the late stages of Ryan's career, that's what he ought to be doing. And much the same way I watched Greg Knapp's offensive style kind of squander the Michael Vick years in some cases, especially near the end of Vick's tenure in Atlanta. I feel like the offensive play calling for the Falcons post Kyle Shanahan with Sarkisian and with Cutter now, I feel like it's an example of squandering some of those prime years for Matt Ryan. It's hard to find a franchise quarterback. The idea that you've had a couple of them and through play calling situations have squandered some of those best years, that's got to be awfully frustrating for the fans.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I like to see Matt Ryan with the short intermediate throws and getting it downfield. But to me, he's just in the pocket way too long. I mean, he's pumping the ball. It seems like the routes are way too deep as I'm looking at him, the outs, all the different routes that they run, the deep posts, all those. But I would like to see Matt Ryan almost come throw on rhythm like the old West Coast offense.
Yeah.
And I know people have different components of it, like Greg Knapp. That's what they have Mike Vick trying to run the West Coast offense. Yeah. But I agree with you on that. But just change has to happen. He's always had a lot of great, Matt Ryan's done really well when it comes to the West Coast offense and no huddle offense. Something has to change, though.
Yeah.
Some adjustments have to be made or the offensive coordinator has to be adjusted.
Let me get King Vincent here. It says, we're talking about a quarterback that came in and made a difference, took the playoffs in his first year, also took us to a Super Bowl, should have won the MVP. He had a perfect pass rate in the game. Matt Ryan doesn't play defense. You should focus more on the defense. Vic Beasley, Desmond Trufant, Devondre Campbell, they've all got to go. And that point that King mentions about those defensive guys, some of those that are certainly struggling. The Campbell thing I'll certainly debate you on. Trufant, some of the others, maybe a little bit less so. But That's one of the issues that's going to fall back on Thomas Dimitroff. When all this is finally, discussed and debated, is the fact that you don't have enough clear answers on defense. When Keanu Neal is healthy, he hasn't been for most of the last 2 years. When he's healthy, he is an answer. Obviously, everybody will tell you that Grady Jarrett's one of the blue chip players in the league. He plays his position at kind of a plus level. I think Deion Jones is good. I think it remains to be seen if he's a next level player as of yet. He was obviously missed last season due to injury. But that's one of the issues that King rightly brings up, is that the bigger talent hole is on the defensive side of the ball, where you don't have enough solid starters. You don't have enough solid starters over there.
No, you're right. And I think it's frustrating for the fans because forever they've been wanting to have a defense. When Dan came in, he promised a fast and physical defense that was going to win championships. And it hadn't quite been there. They're fast. Sometime they're physical. The year of the Super Bowl, they were fantastic until they got into the Super Bowl. But they're going to have to make some adjustments. You got to manage the personnel you got till you can get better ones. So they're managing this personnel till they get better ones. But Thomas Dimitroff and Dan, they wanted fast, up the field, hybrid type of defensive end. So they got Tack, they got Vic. And to me, the disappointing part is Grady's the only guy inside. Now they went to a 3-4. They got two dudes in there. I still don't know their names.
Yeah.
The nose guy. I mean, they're not a part of the picture. They're not supposed to be in this narrative. They're not supposed to be starters, right? To me, Vic's not supposed to be coming off the bench. Tack's not supposed to be rotating. Adrian Claiborne, as much as I love AC. Adrian Claiborne is a good rusher, and I love AC. AC was brought here because the lack of pass rush that they have.
That's the truth.
And that's the bad part about it.
That's the absolute truth.
What's the kid they just traded to Philly? Who came here from I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. He was dancing in the locker room. Came from LSU.
But your point about McKinley could not be more accurate. Could not be more accurate.
Riley. Duke Riley.
Yeah, right.
He was supposed to one day be the Will backer.
But bringing Claiborne back here was an admission that the guys who were here were not getting it done. One more quick comment. High Life ATL on the same subject says offensive and defensive line need improvement. Build the middle. That's another thing that ultimately is going to be like the first line of Dimitroff's obituary as Falcons general manager is, look at the state of these lines of scrimmage right now. Offensive line, with a healthy Lindstrom, you feel a little bit better about that, but you had to, do 2 big first-round picks to even get that situation taken care of back this spring. You just laid it out on the defensive line. There's just not enough answers over there. When you don't have success on either line of scrimmage, then your roster is not. You've got major holes.
Yeah, you do, because the best teams are going to have, great offensive lines and defensive lines, because it's a big man's game. The NFL is a big man's game, and you're right.
Before we talk about Mohamed Sanu, Matt Schaub this week, I think he ought to be playing quarterback. We'll see what happens on Sunday. He said either way, it's his job to be ready. Here is Schaub, the backup.
I got to do my job, and that's my role for this team. If I'm called upon to go out there and play, then, I have to perform my role as the quarterback. That's lead the offense, get completions, know the game situations, convert third downs, and score in the red zone. The football doesn't change. We just have to go out and execute our plan.
That's got to be a pretty good life. Play a lot of golf, get the hat on Sundays, making good money. Matt's making pretty good money. Not to get my hands into his wallet, but he's making pretty good money. That backup quarterback gig's a good gig.
You ain't lying. And they're always the funnest guy on the team. They're the most
they're
rested.
Happy.
The kickers and the backup quarterback. They're fun.
Happy.
They're happy. With Schaub, I'll be interested to see what he has. So to me, when it comes to we got a lot of viewers that are talking about they want Matt Ryan traded. Well, let's see what Schaub has. So, you understand what I'm saying? So, you want somebody to fill in. You want to get a young quarterback. Somebody said Joe Burrow. That ain't going to happen. Joe Burrow's going to go in the first couple rounds, I believe. But we'll see what Schaub has. But if Schaub starts, let me just say this. If Matt Schaub starts, it's going to be an energy downer. It will. If they get there this week, in which that's the reason why Matt Ryan has to start. If they get to the Benz this Sunday, and Matt Ryan is out, it's going to be a huge downer from an emotional standpoint for the team.
Fair enough. But if Ryan's healthy and raring to go in 2020,
Julio's words, Mr. Julio becomes a he's like,
we'll see how that plays out. It's AJC Falcons News Now. It's sponsored by Miller Lite, the official beer of the Atlanta Falcons. It tastes great. It's just 96 calories. So if you're getting ready for some tailgating on Sunday, or if you're getting ready to watch the game with some friends, Miller Lite a great choice. By the way, when you're stocking up, fill it up in this Atlanta Falcons branded cooler from our friends at the AJC there as well. Let's talk Mohamed Sanu trade here just for a moment. Sanu was sent to the New England Patriots this week in exchange for a second-round pick. Sanu's obviously been a really good player for Atlanta, but given what you got back, second-round pick, do you like this trade for the Falcons?
Major win for the Falcons. I love this trade. Sanu was a role player at best. To me, he was a third option. You had Hooper number 2, Sanu number 3, and Ridley, to me, somewhere in there 3 and 4. The Falcons get a second-round pick, so the Falcons got a starter. Great job, Thomas Dimitroff, Dan Quinn, whoever made this decision. Sanu goes. They get what they want.
Yeah.
And we get a second-round pick, and when I hear second round, that's a starter. So pencil that person in. I thought it was a great trade by the Falcons.
I completely agree with you. I think the second-round pick is a huge commodity in this league for the very reason you just mentioned. That's someone you expect to get as a starter back in a situation like that. So I think you're absolutely right about that. I also think that for Atlanta, we talked about some of the salary cap stuff, and I thought that Michael Cunningham did a really good job writing about that at AJC.com this week, that when you look at the future, you've got so many guys who are about to become a lot more expensive. Ryan's about to become more expensive. Julio's about to become more expensive. You kind of can't keep everybody. At some point in time, someone's going to have to be cut from just from a salary cap standpoint. And, for me, is it a Mac? Well, no, you got to go out and find a center anyway. That to me is not a good salary cap casualty. Is a Sanu a better salary cap casualty moving on? I believe that it is, because now, in addition to getting the second-round draft pick back, you also get something else which I think ought to be almost just as valuable. Now it's a chance to give an expanded role to Calvin Ridley. It is time to see what this young man can do. Now, I believe it's going to be good. I believe that that Ridley brings a lot of good things to the table. In an expanded role, I think we'll see an even better performance from him. But to me, more touches, more opportunities for Calvin Ridley is almost just as valuable as the second-round pick.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I really liked about it. Now, Ridley, you're that guy. You don't have you're the second guy in the room now. You're the leader. You don't have to. When Julio talks, it probably was Sanu next. Now it's you, Ridley. You have a chance to pick up some of those routes that were designed for Sanu. So again, I'm excited to see about what Ridley does, because his rookie year, he was rolling. He had, I look up, here he is, 1 touchdown, 2, 3, 4, 5, and plus. But let's see what happens.
Along those same lines, Dan Quinn did talk about this topic here this week, kind of explaining the mechanism by which this trade came together. Here is the Falcons coach.
Number one, we're always going to just try to do whatever we can that's best for the team in that moment. And so that was one of the cases here. We've always had a mindset on developing players. And so this was one of those cases where we felt like it was worth it at this time to do that. We've certainly pushed Cal, and he's ready to take on the bigger role, and Gage is another one into that space to do it. So if we didn't think it was best for the team, obviously we wouldn't have done it. So it was just the right time for that move, and always in the best interest of the team.
I also want to follow up here with another clip from Dan Quinn, because the obvious question is, well, the timing with which this trade happens, it almost looks like what we kind of see commonly in Major League Baseball for a team near the trade deadline who's not in a pennant chase. The idea of they're sellers instead of buyers. Is this a sell-off? Is this an example of Atlanta looking to shed as much from the roster as it can, both in terms of salary cap implications for the future and collecting as many draft picks as possible? I'm not necessarily against that if I'm Atlanta, but Quinn said that this is not necessarily an example of a sell-off because the team is struggling, that it really is more about the future implications for how you make the salary cap work with the talent that you're allotted. Here's more from Quinn on that point.
You always have to make decisions, even when they're really hard, what's best for the team. And this would have been the case either way the record had been. It's not easy to do it when you really, obviously you get close to players, and so you want to keep every guy as long as you can in every moment. But when you have to think the big part of it, team first. I love all of them, but none of them as much as I love the team. You always have to make the best decisions for that.
I certainly think there's a point to be made that Atlanta might have been looking to get rid of Sanu no matter what, because of what he's going to count against the cap next year. I believe it's between $2 and $3 million. I think that he's going to count against the cap next year. So they may be looking to move on from him anyway. But because of the timing of when they do it, New England obviously needs help at the wide receiver position. Not giving Tom Brady enough weapons has kind of been one of the storylines for the Patriots now for a couple of years. They need help there in that regard. I think you only get this second-round pick because of the fact that the Patriots are in a position where they needed to be buyers here. Atlanta says we're not necessarily selling off our roster. We had to do this anyway. But the timing of which they did it certainly gave them a chance to get a better haul.
Well, I agree with you on that. And I think the Falcons, they were winners in this. And this is one of those things where a relationship comes in. I think Thomas Dimitrov's relationship with Bill Belichick and this entire organization, I think that makes it easier to put things like this together, particularly when it comes to New England. Now, am I in there in the room? No, but I'm pretty sure the relationship had something to do with it, and they were able to, hey, let's make this work for both guys. Now, when it comes to the trade, did I feel like this was one of the ones they were, getting rid of, dumping? No. And I don't think it had nothing to do with me personally, performance, nor necessarily money. I think it had to do with opportunity. Mm-hmm. Now, you get rid of Sanu. Offense has been doing pretty good. Sanu's, things have been positive. He hadn't been in the news for anything real negative, whether it was drop passes or anything, or catching a lot of passes. Now, if this is Desmond Trufant, you're like, oh, wow. They're dumping him because what? Of his performance. So I think it has a little bit to do from a perception standpoint. When the fans are looking at it, you get rid of Trufant, like, yeah, we're getting rid of this dude because he ain't performed.
Yeah.
But with Trufant, it looks as what? Oh, wow, it's just a piece that we're going to let go because we're helping Ridley. But the other guy, you're like, oh, man, he hadn't playing well, so they got rid of him because of his play.
J.J. Green says Sanu is the third down safety net. Hooper better be ready. Probably more touches coming his way. We also talked about Calvin Ridley in a situation like that.
I love Hoop. He's just killing it as a fantasy tight end. I love you, Hoop.
Yeah. Shira Floyd, though, says they never should have drafted Calvin Ridley. Although he's good, that shouldn't have happened. We needed defense, she says, and we went out for offense after we had legitimate receivers. So, Shira, I understand the point with which you're making here. I understand where you're coming from on this. I really think, though, in the years to come, you're going to be really happy to have Calvin Ridley. Eventually, this is the kind of guy that could become your replacement for Julio Jones, and in the NFL, you do have to be thinking about that. And the identity of the Falcons is still on its offense. This is never going to be a top 2, top 3 defense in Football Outsiders DVOA. That's just not what this current crop is designed to do. You're a lot closer to being a top-flight offense. Right now, Falcons aren't top-flight in either category, but you're a lot closer to being a top-flight offense. I think you got to ride that train and say, defensive. If you are very good offensively, you only have to be average defensively. Now, you could say the same thing's true on the other side of the ball as well, but Atlanta's close, not currently, but close to being very good offensively. If you're top 3, top 4 offenses, the way we were in 2016, average is fine. Mm-hmm. Be 16th in the league in defense if you're top 3 offensively, and guess what you're doing? You're playing late in January.
Opportunity. The Falcons saw opportunity to get Ridley, and they didn't think he was going to be there. So, they drafted the best person on the board, but also, don't forget, Julio Jones, every time he plays 2 plays, he does what? He takes himself out. Julio's had foot injuries, a lot of different reasons why you want to get Ridley. So I love it. Now, when it first happened, I was like, man, they should have got a defense.
Yeah.
They should have did this, but, look at Ridley, look at the opportunity. And also, it's not like Sanu is some young guy, you know what I mean? So Ridley, really, to me, the 2 guys they got to mainly focus on. Julio got his money. Sanu is gone. I'm trying to get Hooper locked down, and I'm trying to take care of Ridley as far as being eventually bringing him from number 2 when Julio leaves in the next few years, having Ridley ready.
Billy Ray Field says, what if Schaub goes on a winning streak? What do we do then? So he thinks that Schaub's going to be the Falcons' version of Teddy Bridgewater.
No way.
I don't quite see that either, but it's a fair question.
The difference between 2 offensive lines, and then you got Kamara.
Yeah, exactly. Although last week they didn't even have Kamara, and they still won. Let me do one more quote on the audio clip here on the Sanu situation, coming from Julio Jones, a guy that had put a lot of time into helping Sanu get to the player that he ultimately became before he left. For Julio, this is obviously, I don't want to say an emotional moment, but certainly they had a connection with each other, and Julio talked about that this week.
Very tough. Mo is a guy that came in and we worked out a lot together and working on his craft and things like that. And he wanted to be great and he became great at what he did and things like that. That's not on me to, discuss and even talk about. Like, I don't do that, you know what I'm saying? But as a teammate, great guy, great competitor, you know what I'm saying? Loved him so.
So what's that like? I mean, you were never traded, right? You played for him more than the team, but you never traded. Yeah, you're a free agent when you went to Carolina. But I'm sure you had guys get traded or you had guys that were, cut. we always say, well, it's business, and everybody that plays knows that. But there's still guys you make friends with, and there's guys you work and help develop. What's it like to look over that locker room and not see that guy sitting there at that locker anymore? What do the players go through in a situation like that?
Oh, disappointed, especially if he's a baller. You know what I
that's
mean?
a good
Like,
point.
if he's a baller and you're just like, you hate that he's gone. And see, here's the thing. If you're friends, you're going to see him again. It's cool. But if you're a teammate that is big time, you want to make sure he's there. So in that situation, the first thing Julio and them say, dang, he gone.
Yeah.
Man, he done went to the Patriots, man. He about to get a ring.
Yeah.
He has a chance to get a ring. But let me tell you a quick story. When Deion Sanders left the Falcons, when he was a free agent, when he first went to San Fran, it just wasn't the same as far as the locker room, the fun, the camaraderie. And I always remember when we played the Niners, when Deion was across the field, when we watched them, I watched them because we were super cool. When I watched him on that sideline with the bandana, the red, and all the different stuff with the Niners, it really was just super hurtful because he brought so much to the team. And then, to make it worse, after the Niners beat the brakes off us, so we're going to get on the bus with those candlesticks. So we're going to get on the bus. Deion has a stage set up where our buses are in the Candlestick Park where we were going to leave. We're coming out the tunnel. All of a sudden, we hear somebody on the mic, prime time, it must be the money, MC Hammer.
Oh, my God.
Deion had a stage set up outside of the back of just to taunt Julio Jones and the team. He had a stage set up in the back and was doing a live performance for the Niners fans, all the Too Legit to Quit Hammer. I'm talking about our buses. Our buses are right here, right? Literally, our buses, we are literally on the bus like this, and everybody's sitting right here, and you can see Deion's right there with speakers, and it was the most unbelievable thing ever, and Julio Jones got the hobnob boot in his face like Larry Munson used to say, and it was a true story, and that was crazy. When you let a superstar go, especially that kind of superstar.
Yeah.
I don't expect that from Sanu. but
Is it the same game he said, this is my house?
No, that's the next game.
Is that the one where he fought Rising?
Yeah, where he put them hands on Dre. It was
Man, that's tough.
Primo says it was a 3-piece knockout.
That is tough.
Dre,
man.
no, he was wrong.
So he brought MC Hammer out.
No, he didn't bring him out. Hammer was opening up for him. Hammer was like on the mic.
Hammer was opening for him.
Hammer, look. The stage is literally like a small stage. It's not a concert.
I've never heard.
It's still daytime. It's daytime, bro.
I've never heard.
It's daytime. Prime must have rushed out the locker room, had it set up. It must be the money.
Oh my gosh, that is fantastic.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Fantastic. It's AJC Falcons News Now. It's sponsored by Miller Lite, the official beer of the Atlanta Falcons. It tastes great. It's just 96 calories. We'll have a final thought on Falcons Seahawks to come. Let's take a quick trip around the rest of the NFL, though, and preview Week 8 in the league where they play for pay here and kind of find out what we think is going to go down, especially some of these NFC South opponents. Let's take a look at some of the games. Obviously, Seahawks, Falcons, we've talked a good bit about. Broncos at Colts. Indianapolis trying to stay hot there.
Nothing there. Broncos getting beat.
Yeah, Bucks at Titans. That's a pretty bad game.
As long as Derrick Henry gets a touchdown, it's a good game.
Cardinals at Saints, I think, is a pretty good game.
I like that.
I think it's a pretty good game.
Cardinals rolling, what, 3 games in a row?
Yeah, that's a pretty good.
Yeah,
that's a pretty good game. Rams and Bengals. Would not watch that in your backyard. Eagles, Bills.
That's a good game.
Yeah.
It's more of a good game because what are the Bills about? The Eagles are a prideful team. Let's go see what the Bills got.
Chargers at Bears. Not a ton of interest for me in that one.
Right now.
Giants, Lions. That's pretty rough. Jets at Jaguars. I'm not quite so sure about that. This is fun. Panthers, 49ers. That's a fun game right there.
Old NFC West rivals.
That's exactly right. Yeah, taking it back to the original NFC West that the Panthers were part of. Raiders, Texans, this is a good game. How about Jarvis Landry guaranteeing victory for the Browns against the Patriots?
You better back it up.
Packers at Chiefs. Our buddy Connor Riley says that he thinks that Patrick Mahomes may play in this game. Is that right? Mahomes?
Now, he shouldn't play. He shouldn't play.
Man, he's got a Super Bowl to try to win. How are you going to say that Mahomes shouldn't play and Ryan should play?
Because he has something to play for. Matt Ryan, you play, you win, you lose.
I don't know about that.
No, Mahomes has a knee. He has a knee injury.
Uh-huh.
Matt Ryan has just a basic ankle sprain.
And he hasn't signed Mahomes doesn't have a contract. Yeah, does he? Like a big one. Yeah, so maybe you are right about that. Hey, what's the Monday night game one more time? Let me see that one more time. What's the Monday night game?
The Dolphins.
Ooh.
The Dolphins are a disaster.
Man, ESPN, how much money are they spending on these Monday night games? You get Dolphins, Steelers.
I still be watching it. Y'all still watching
know,
too.
watch
I'll be sitting on the couch.
Watch every minute of it. All right, Chuck, final thought from you today. Falcons, Seahawks, how do you think it plays out? What do you think plays out after that?
Well, I think if the Falcons play with Matt Ryan this week, they have a great chance to win. I think this is the one. I really believe it. I think Julio's motivation is going to help him take it to another level. If they don't win, just be kind of like the same. And so? I don't think Dan Quinn's getting fired no time soon.
Okay.
I really don't.
All right, it'll be fun to watch play out. By the way, for all the breaking news for the Falcons, Ryan status, Quinn status, Thomas Dimitroff status, everything else, the best way to stay up to date is to be an AJC subscriber. And when you go to the website, subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now, you get this officially branded, licensed Falcons cooler as a thank you. Whether it's the e-paper with the Sunday print, or you want 7-day home delivery, lots of choices for you. But as a special thank you, AJC, proud partners of the Falcons, got this cooler for you. Subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now, the website to go to. Huge thanks for Miller Lite for making all this possible. Y'all enjoy some this weekend when you're watching Falcons football. Chuck, good to be with you here today. Look forward to seeing all of you back here Monday, 1 p.m. AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. We'll talk to you then.